I thought the Amazon was dangerous because of the snakes, the jaguars, or the river that swallows boats whole. I was wrong. What haunts me isn't on any map. It's hidden in the ruins the jungle doesn't want you to find. They warned me, don't step on the moss-covered stones. Don't stay past dusk. Don't take anything from the altar. Those rules weren't folklore, they were survival. Because deep inside the Amazon, the ruins aren't abandoned, they're guarded. And if you make one mistake, the jungle itself will take you. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop it in the comments below. And if you've made it this far, you know the rules. Don't scroll past. Don't leave without subscribing. Because there are more stories waiting in the dark, and you don't want to miss the next one. The jungle is never silent. That was the first lesson I learned the moment we left the riverboat and pushed deeper into the interior. Even at night, the air thrummed with life. Chirps, croaks, wings beating in sudden flurries, branches cracking under unseen paws. During the day, it was no different. The Amazon didn't rest, and it didn't care who walked among its shadows. I'd been hired as the lead explorer for a joint expedition, funded by a university and, more quietly, by a private collector. The kind of man who believed certain relics belonged in the right hands, though those hands always turned out to be his own. I didn't argue. His money had paid for boats, food, supplies, guides, and my own salary. But the closer we got to the ruins, the more I felt the weight of something older than money pressing in. We were 5 in total. Myself, the guide Emilio, 2 graduate students eager for discoveries to bolster their theses, and 1 collector's assistant, an older man named Keen who wore his arrogance like armor. He stayed at the back of our little convoy, machete loose in his grip, always sneering when one of us stumbled. He had no respect for the jungle. That worried me. By the 4th day of trekking, the air was thick as soup. Every breath felt like drinking warm water. The canopy above was so dense the sun barely touched the ground, and when it did, it came as stray shafts of gold that glowed on moss and vines. The deeper we went, the older everything looked. Trees twisted together in impossible shapes, roots swallowing stones carved by hands centuries gone. That was when Emilio called us to stop. He didn't shout. He just raised his hand, and we froze. "Here," he said quietly. "From here on, rules." The graduate students exchanged a quick, nervous laugh. They thought he was joking, but Emilio's face was as serious as the machete scar that cut across his cheek. He stooped down, cleared away leaves, and revealed a slab of stone beneath his boot. Etched into its surface were symbols, simple but unmistakable. Spirals, hands, eyes. "These," Emilio whispered, "mark the beginning." "Ruins ahead," Keen rolled his eyes. "At last. Let's move before we waste more daylight." But Emilio didn't move. He tapped the stone with the back of his machete. "Listen, the ruins, they don't want to be found. So you obey the rules, or you won't leave." The jungle seemed to listen with us. Even the insects paused. I felt sweat roll down my back as Emilio recited them. Rule 1, don't step on the moss-covered stones. His gaze lifted toward the undergrowth. They are traps, markers, or worse. You step on moss, the jungle swallows you. The grad students had stopped smiling. Rule 2, don't take anything from the altar. Not a coin, not a feather, not a pebble. The altar feeds the ruins. You starve it. It feeds on you. Keen scoffed, but I noticed he kept his eyes on Emilio's machete. And Rule 3, Emilio paused, as if testing the air. Don't stay past dusk. When the sun falls, the ruins wake, and they remember trespassers. For a moment, no one said anything. The rules were simple, but they carried a weight I couldn't dismiss. My stomach nodded. I'd been on countless digs before, but I'd never heard local guides speak with such conviction. Usually, warnings were just stories told for fun, or to keep outsiders respectful. But this wasn't amusement. Emilio's voice carried fear. We pressed on. The first glimpse of the ruins came an hour later. A broken wall, swallowed halfway by strangler figs, its carvings still sharp despite centuries of rain. Symbols like those on the slab, eyes, always eyes. The grad students scrambled forward, sketching, photographing. Keen lit a cigarette, the smoke curling against the damp air. Emilio spat into the dirt. "The ruins don't like fire," he muttered. I told Keen to put it out. To my surprise, he did. The path widened, leading us into what had once been a plaza. Massive stones lay tumbled in the ferns, each block easily the size of a car. Vines clung to them like veins. In the center stood a broken pedestal, its top flat and smooth, as though it had been polished yesterday. The altar, even untouched, it radiated wrongness. My skin prickled, and I knew without asking that Emilio's second rule was no superstition. The grad students circled it, whispering about rituals, sacrifices, cosmology. Their voices echoed strangely, as though the stones repeated every word. I didn't speak. I just watched the tree line, because the jungle was watching us back. I caught it in flashes, a branch moving against the wind, a vine curling when no one touched it, the shape of a root that hadn't been there a moment before. The jungle wasn't just alive, it was aware. We set up camp on the edge of the plaza. Emilio refused to let us pitch tents closer to the altar. He marked the ground with chalk, circles, and slashes that looked like nothing to me, but seemed to calm him. When the sun dipped lower, I understood why. The ruins grew quiet, too quiet. The frogs stopped. The birds stopped. Even the cicadas stopped. The silence was so total, it felt like standing underwater. Emilio's face went pale. "We leave. Now." But Keen refused. He wanted photographs, sketches, samples. "We came all this way to see broken rocks." "Nonsense. The collector will want proof." He strode across the plaza, his boots clacking against the stones. I swear the moss shifted beneath his foot, as though reaching for him. "Keen," I warned. My voice cracked in the silence. He stopped at the altar, ran his hand along its surface, and smirked. "Looks like nothing but stone to me." I felt the air change, heavy, expectant. "Step away," Emilio hissed. Keen didn't. He leaned over the altar and spat. The sound was louder than a gunshot in the stillness, and that's when the jungle moved. A vine dropped from the canopy, slamming into the altar hard enough to crack the stone. Another wrapped around Keen's arm before he could react, pulling tight. He screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the silence. The grad students froze. Emilio lunged forward, machete flashing, and severed the vine. Sap sprayed like blood, steaming as it hit the stone. The jungle shuddered. I don't know how else to describe it. The trees, the ground, the very air seemed to heave as one, a single breath of anger. "Run!" Emilio shouted, "before the sun sets." We grabbed our packs and bolted. I didn't dare look back at the altar, or at Keen cradling his arm, or at the way the vines writhed like snakes. The jungle had warned us once. Next time, it wouldn't let us go. We didn't stop running until the altar was a memory behind us. The jungle seemed to close in, every path looking the same, every tree trunk twisted like it was hiding a face. Emilio led us with a speed that defied his age, hacking vines aside, boots finding paths only he could see. The grad students tripped and stumbled, clutching their packs to their chests. Keen limped, clutching his arm where the vine had burned him raw. When we finally stopped, I collapsed against a fallen log. My lungs burned, sweat soaked my shirt. But Emilio stood tall, machete in hand, scanning the shadows like they could reach out and grab us. "They gave a warning," he said quietly. "Next time, they take." No one argued. Even Keen, pale and sweating, kept his mouth shut. We camped away from the plaza that night, deeper in the trees. Emilio built a fire, small and low, feeding it sparingly. He muttered prayers as he worked. The grad students whispered about the altar, about vines moving on their own, about how none of this should be possible. I didn't join them. My eyes were fixed on Keen. He sat apart, rubbing his bandaged arm. His pride was wounded worse than his flesh, and I could already see the stubbornness building behind his silence. He wouldn't admit it, but he wanted revenge, for the pain, for the humiliation. That was dangerous. When the fire burned down to embers, Emilio gave us each a warning. "Tomorrow, we walk carefully. The ruins are not just walls, they are everywhere, and the first rule is most important. Don't step on the moss," one grad student whispered. Emilio nodded grimly. "Yes, even when it looks harmless, even when it looks beautiful, Moss means the jungle owns it. You step there and you don't come back. The next morning, the forest seemed different. The air hung thicker. The light through the canopy felt heavier, as if the sun struggled to reach us. And everywhere, I began to notice the moss. It coated roots, draped over stones, clung to fallen trunks. Some patches were faint and thin, nothing more than green dust. Others were thick and spongy, like rugs spread across the jungle floor, and it grew fast. I swear some stones looked bare when we passed, only to be coated in green when I glanced back. We moved carefully, stepping only on bare soil or leaf litter. Emilio pointed constantly, "Here, there, avoid that." His eyes were sharper than any of ours. He seemed to sense where the moss ended and the earth began. But Keen didn't look. By midday, his patience had thinned. "This is absurd," he snapped when Emilio stopped us to skirt a mossy root. "We're wasting hours zigzagging. Look at it, it's just moss." He lifted his boot as if to step directly onto a green-covered stone. Emilio's machete shot out, blocking his leg mid-air. "Don't," Emilio hissed. Keen's face went red. "Get that blade away from me, old man." Emilio didn't move the blade. His eyes burned with something deeper than anger, fear. "You want to die? Do it alone, but you don't drag the rest of us with you." The grad students clutched their notebooks like shields. I stepped forward, trying to ease the tension. "Keen, think about the altar. You saw it. That wasn't just vines. The rules are real." For a moment, I thought he'd fight, but then he spat to the side and lowered his foot. "Fine, but this is madness. Every second we waste, the collector loses patience. And when he loses patience, it's my head, not yours." We continued, slower now. Every step felt deliberate, like crossing a minefield. My nerves burned raw, waiting for someone to misstep. And then someone did. It wasn't Keen. It was one of the grad students, Maria. She was scribbling notes while walking, her eyes fixed on the sketch of a carving we'd passed. Her boot slid half an inch onto a mossy patch at the edge of a stone. The moment it touched, the ground gave way. The moss collapsed like a false floor, and Maria screamed as her leg plunged into darkness. Emilio lunged, grabbing her pack straps and yanking backward. I dropped my gear and grabbed her arm. Together we pulled as the moss writhed, curling up her boot like it wanted to drag her down. For a second, I saw what was underneath. Not dirt, not stone. A hollow, gaping pit lined with bones, human bones, bleached white and piled deep. And beneath them, movement. Something pale and slick, slithering away into the dark. We dragged Maria free, her boot tearing loose from the moss. It snapped shut behind her, sealing as if nothing had happened. Only her trembling screams proved it had been real. Her boot was gone, her socks soaked with some slimy residue that steamed in the sun. The grad students were frozen in terror. Keen muttered curses, backing away from the moss. For once, he had no sarcasm. Emilio knelt beside Maria, eyes blazing. "This is why you obey. The moss is not moss. It is mouths, and the jungle is always hungry." We didn't stop until we reached higher ground. A ridge of bare stone jutted above the canopy, giving us a rare view of the endless green ocean stretching in all directions. Maria was shaken but alive, her ankle bandaged. She wouldn't stop crying, repeating, "It had eyes." I saw eyes in the pit. I didn't correct her, because part of me believed it. As the sun lowered, we debated setting camp on the ridge. Emilio shook his head. "Too exposed. The ruins see everything from here." We climbed down into a grove of ceiba trees, their roots thick and wide enough to carve out spaces for our hammocks. Emilio marked another circle in the dirt, muttering words under his breath. That night, sleep came fitful. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Maria's boot vanishing into that living moss, bones shifting below. At some point in the dark, a sound woke me. Not animal, not wind. A voice, software low, coming from the trees. It spoke in words I didn't know, but the tone was unmistakable, an invitation, a promise. I turned slowly. Beyond the dying fire, I saw moss creeping at the edge of our circle. Inch by inch, it spread across the dirt, reaching for us. And just for a heartbeat, I swore I saw a pale hand pushing up from within it. fingers curling. I didn't sleep again. Morning light bled through the canopy like liquid gold. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful, until I saw the moss. It had crept closer overnight. Not much, just a few inches, but enough to prove it wasn't bound by soil or sunlight. It grew where it pleased, feeding on something we didn't understand. Emilio's protective circle was broken in 3 places, moss roots worming across the dirt, like veins. He noticed too. His jaw tightened as he hacked them away with his machete, muttering under his breath. The grad students watched with wide eyes. Maria refused to put her feet on the ground at all. She sat trembling in her hammock, clutching her journal like a holy book. We packed fast and left the grove. Emilio didn't say it, but I knew. If we'd stayed one more night, the moss would have swallowed us whole. By midday, the air shifted. The trees thinned, the undergrowth pulled back, and we stumbled into another clearing. The altar. It stood at the heart of a sunken plaza, stone walls sloping inward as if the jungle itself had carved a bowl to hold it. Vines draped the walls, but none touched the altar. It was pristine, carved from a single block of black stone, surface polished smooth as glass, and objects lay upon it. Offerings, gold figurines, old pottery, jaguar skulls, even modern things, pocket knives, watches, coins dulled by time. Some looked decades old, others newer, too new. Keen froze. His eyes gleamed the moment he saw the gold. "Jackpot," he muttered. Emilio's arm shot out. "No." Keen's jaw clenched. "We came for this." "You came for death if you touch it," Emilio snapped. "Second rule, don't take from the altar. Don't give to it either. That place belongs to them." The grad students scribbled furiously, their hands shaking. They knew this was history unfolding, but I knew it was more than history. The air itself felt different here, thick, heavy, buzzing with energy like static before a storm. And then I noticed something worse. Shadows. Even in the noon sun, the plaza's shadows stretched long and wrong, bending toward the altar. Our bodies cast them too, but instead of trailing behind us, they crawled forward, reaching as if to touch the stone. I swallowed hard. "We shouldn't stay here." Emilio nodded, already turning away. But Keen lingered, staring at the gold. We moved on, or tried to, but Keen hung back. I noticed him fumbling near the edge of the clearing, his body angled to block my view. When he caught up, his pocket bulged. He'd taken something. I didn't say anything, not then. I was afraid of what Emilio would do if he knew, and part of me hoped maybe it didn't matter. Maybe the rules weren't absolute, but hope dies fast in the jungle. That night, the air grew colder. The fire's warmth barely reached us, though the flames burned strong. Every sound carried sharper, the crackle of wood, the drip of water, the distant cry of howler monkeys. And then came the whispers. At first, I thought it was the grad students talking, but when I looked, they were silent, wide-eyed, staring into the dark. The whispers weren't human. They came from every direction, soft voices overlapping, languages I couldn't place. Some low and guttural, others high and lilting, like children singing through water. Maria began to sob. Emilio shoved dirt onto the fire, smothering it instantly. "No light. Don't answer." We sat in choking darkness. My heart hammered so loud, I thought they would hear it. The whispers circled closer. I felt breath on my neck, cold as grave soil. And then the shadows appeared. Not cast by us. These moved on their own, writhing along the ground, stretching across tree roots, reaching for the hammocks. Shapes of people, tall and thin, heads bowed, arms outstretched. One leaned over Maria's hammock. She froze, eyes wide, lips trembling. The shadow bent closer, then stopped. Its face turned, not toward her, but toward Keen. Every shadow did, because Keen's pocket glowed faintly, a golden shimmer leaking through the fabric. Tried to hide it, stuffing the object deeper, but the shadows surged forward. A dozen hands clawed across the dirt, stretching toward him. Emilio shouted, "Drop it!" Keen shook his head, terror warring with greed. "No, it's mine!" The shadows lunged. His hammock bucked violently, ropes snapping as something unseen dragged it sideways. Keen screamed, slashing wildly with his knife. His blade passed through smoke, through nothing. The grad students shrieked. Maria covered her ears. I didn't think. I tackled Keen, ripping his pocket open. The golden idol, a jaguar figurine, its eyes inlaid with jade, fell into the dirt. The shadows pounced, not on us, on the idol. They swarmed it, twisting and writhing, overlapping, until it vanished beneath a seething black mass. When they pulled back, the idol was gone. Not broken, not dropped. Gone. Keen lay trembling, his clothes soaked with sweat. His voice cracked. They took it. Emilio's face was carved from stone. The altar reclaims what belongs to it. We warned you. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. The whispers never left, circling just beyond hearing, fading only when dawn's light broke the canopy. Keen survived, but something in him had cracked. His bravado was gone, replaced by a hollow, haunted stare. He muttered to himself as we packed, words none of us could make out. The grad students avoided him. Maria wouldn't even look at him. And I began to wonder how many rules there were, because if moss and offerings were only the first two, what else did this place demand? As we set out, Emilio whispered only one thing. The jungle remembers every step, and the ruins keep count. The jungle doesn't have sunsets the way the city does. There's no slow, pretty fade from gold to pink to violet. Out here, the light cuts out like someone flipping a switch. One moment you can see your hand in front of your face, the next, you're swallowed whole. That's why the third rule mattered most. Don't stay past dusk. We reached the ruins' northern edge by late afternoon. The plaza stretched wider here, with crumbling staircases that led to raised terraces. Thick vines snaked around the stone, but the carvings underneath were still visible. Grotesque faces with hollow eyes, jaguars with fangs bared, spirals that seemed to shift if you stared too long. Maria stopped sketching midway through a line and whispered, "They're watching us." Her pencil snapped in her hand. The grad students didn't argue. They just tucked their notebooks away and kept close to Emilio. Keen walked apart from the rest, muttering under his breath. His clothes were torn, his hair matted, but it wasn't the jungle that had worn him down. It was what he'd seen in the shadows. He wouldn't admit it, but I could feel it. The man who thought he owned the world was afraid. And in a place like this, fear made you vulnerable. By 5 o'clock, the light was already dimming. Emilio's pace quickened, machete-hacking branches with an urgency he hadn't shown before. "We camp far from here tonight," he said, eyes scanning the tree line. "We don't stay in the ruins." The grad students nodded fast, almost tripping to keep up, but Keen stopped. His voice was sharp. "We're close. If we push just a little longer, we can map the eastern wing before dark." Emilio whirled on him, number not one step more. When the sun dies, they wake. "They?" Maria asked, her voice trembling. Emilio didn't answer. We left the plaza behind, following a trail choked with roots and low-hanging branches. The sound of insects swelled into a maddening buzz. Sweat stung my eyes. Every few minutes, I glanced over my shoulder, certain something was following us. By the time we reached a clearing fit for camp, the canopy above glowed orange with the last scraps of daylight. Emilio barked orders, forcing everyone to set hammocks fast. He doused the perimeter with a mixture of ash and salt, muttering words I didn't understand. That's when the drums started, soft at first. A steady rhythm pulsing from deep inside the ruins, like a heartbeat echoing through stone. The grad students froze. Maria's hands shook so hard, she dropped her journal. Keen smirked. "Locals. Must be a ceremony." But Emilio's face drained of color. "No locals live here. They haven't for centuries." The drums grew louder as night fell. Boom, boom, boom. Each beat seemed to make the air heavier. My chest tightened. The fire hissed and guttered low, flames shrinking like they were afraid. Then came the chanting. Low voices, dozens of them, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Some syllables rose sharp like knives, others sank into guttural growls. The sound slithered through the trees, weaving between us, wrapping around our throats. Maria began to cry, quietly. Emilio pressed a hand over her mouth. "Don't make a sound." The grad students buried their faces in their hammocks, trembling. And then, From the shadows between the trees, lanterns appeared. Dozens of faint, flickering lights, swaying as if carried by invisible hands. They bobbed toward us in a procession, weaving between trunks, never breaking formation. Figures followed. At first they looked human, tall, robed, heads covered. But as they drew closer, their faces wavered in the firelight. Hollow eyes, skin like parchment stretched too thin, teeth that gleamed when no mouths moved. The procession marched straight past our camp. None of us breathed. One figure stopped. Its head turned slowly toward us, lantern light spilling across the clearing. My stomach dropped. Its feet didn't touch the ground. The hem of its robe hovered inches above the earth, shadows writhing beneath it. It lifted a hand, long fingers curling, and pointed. At Keen, he broke. "No," he shouted, stumbling from his hammock. "You don't scare me." The thing's head tilted. The drumming stopped. The chanting cut off like a blade. Silence crashed over the jungle, and then all the lanterns turned toward us at once. The clearing lit with dozens of hollow faces. The air froze, breath misting white though the night was humid. The procession advanced. Emilio hissed, "Don't run. Don't move." But Keen bolted. He crashed through the undergrowth, snapping branches, his screams echoing through the trees. The lanterns followed, floating fast, gliding like predators. The chanting started again, louder now, swelling like thunder. We sat frozen in terror. Keen's screams carried further, then cut off abruptly. Not a fade, just gone. Silence fell again. The lanterns vanished one by one. When they were gone, the jungle was empty. We didn't sleep that night. The grad students huddled together, whispering prayers. Maria clutched her broken pencil like a weapon. Emilio sat awake, eyes fixed on the tree line. He said nothing until the first light of dawn cut through the canopy. Only then did he speak. "Now you understand. Dusk is theirs. We leave before the shadows rise, or we join the procession." He turned his gaze on me, steady, hard. "And this is only the third rule. Morning in the Amazon isn't gentle. There's no birdsong chorus, no slow warmth of sunlight creeping in. It's violent, deafening. A wall of shrieks, hoots, and buzzing, all crashing into your skull at once. But in that clearing, after the night we survived, it felt like silence. The jungle could scream itself hoarse. Nothing drowned out the memory of those lanterns. Keen was gone. The ruins had taken him. And the worst part? I knew we hadn't reached the heart yet. We left camp early, marching in a silence thick with fear. No one spoke of Keen, not even the grad students who had once followed his every word. They knew better. Emilio's machete swung with purpose. He knew where he was leading us. North, deeper into the ruins, toward a temple the maps never showed. His eyes never left the path. He walked like a man being hunted. By noon, the canopy opened onto a courtyard unlike any we'd seen. The ground was covered in roots so massive they cracked the stone beneath, curling around like the grip of a giant's hand. In the center, half buried, stood a stairway descending into darkness. Carved into the lintel were words eroded but still legible. "The altar feeds, or the jungle bleeds." Maria whispered, "What does it mean?" Emilio didn't answer. He only recited the fourth rule. "Don't take anything from the altar." We descended, torches lit against the damp air. The stairwell was steep, narrow, carved straight into the earth. Roots pushed through the walls, slick with moisture, dripping onto our shoulders as if the jungle itself bled into the stone. The chamber at the bottom was vast. Pillars lined the edges, their carvings so intricate they seemed alive. Warriors, jaguars, spirits with hollow eyes. The floor was mosaic, shattered, but still forming a circle of serpents eating their own tails. And in the center stood the altar. It wasn't stone. It was wood, blackened, twisted, polished smooth by centuries of touch. Its surface was scarred, grooves worn into shapes that looked suspiciously like claw marks. On top sat objects, golden masks, emerald figurines, obsidian knives, treasures untouched by time. The grad students gasped. Maria reached out before Emilio caught her wrist. "Don't." His voice cracked like a whip. "That's the rule." The air was wrong in that chamber. Too still. Every breath felt stolen, borrowed. I circled the altar slowly, torchlight glinting off relics no museum would ever believe existed. Some were shaped like gods with fanged mouths, others like beasts, half human. All of them stared at us. Maria shook her head. This should be in a museum. It's history. It's ours to preserve. Emilio snapped, louder than I'd ever heard him. It's not yours. It was never yours. It's theirs. He pointed upward. Through cracks in the ceiling, roots slithered downward like veins. They pulsed faintly, alive. And for the first time, I understood. The jungle didn't just protect the ruins. The jungle was the ruins. The roots were veins. The stone was its skeleton. The rules weren't superstition. They were survival. We didn't touch the altar. We didn't breathe too hard. And yet, something shifted. The torchlight dimmed. The chamber grew colder. A sound rose, low at first, then louder. Not drums this time, not chanting. It was chewing. Wet, rhythmic chewing. From the walls, the carvings began to move. Serpents writhed in the stone, jaws unhinging. Warriors turned their heads, hollow eyes swiveling toward us. Maria screamed. The grad students bolted for the stairwell. Emilio barked, "Stay together." But it was too late. The walls split. Roots burst through like spears, skewering the floor, blocking the exit. The chamber groaned as if the earth itself wanted to crush us. Then the altar cracked. Keen's body fell out, or what was left of it. Skin gray, eyes hollow, mouth stretched in a silent scream. His chest was torn open, ribs bent outward like the frame of a cage. Inside was nothing. Maria dropped to her knees, gagging. The grad students pressed themselves against the wall, sobbing. The altar sealed itself shut again with a sound like bone snapping, and the chewing stopped. A voice echoed through the chamber, not from one place, but from everywhere at once. Deep, ancient, speaking in a tongue we shouldn't have understood, but somehow did. The altar feeds. We staggered out when the roots finally loosened. Emilio dragged Maria by the arm, her eyes wide and glassy. The grad students stumbled behind us, broken, terrified. We didn't stop until daylight burned our faces. Only then did Emilio give the final warning. The jungle doesn't forgive. If you break its rules, it takes what it's owed. Keen thought he could own this place. Now, he belongs to it. He dropped his machete into the dirt, knelt, and pressed his forehead to the ground. His voice was hoarse. We leave now, before it remembers us. That night, far from the ruins, I lay in my hammock and listened. No drums, no chanting. But the jungle wasn't silent. Every rustle of leaves felt like breath. Every crack of a branch felt like a step. The roots beneath my hammock pulsed faintly, as if the earth remembered I had seen the altar. And I knew one thing. The rules weren't meant to protect the ruins from us. They were meant to protect us from the ruins.